Welcome, Grace.
Thank you.
I was just telling you this is very full circle as a former BBG girl to be sitting here with you because you were one of the first people that I followed. Like there was a group of like big BBG girls. You were one of them. Kelsey Wells was another one. I can't remember the rest, but it's so crazy to be sitting here with you now that like 2016, I think is around when it was. So like 8 years later.
Yeah, that is so funny. When did you join it? Like, when would that have been? Because I'm trying to think where in like my journey it would have been that you would have followed me.
I started my account in February of 2016.
Okay.
As a full BBG account. Didn't show my face. I know you didn't either initially. Yeah. Didn't tell anybody my name. I was the Blonde Files. Obviously, the name has followed me.
Yeah.
And was doing like the pictures of the food and the mirror selfies and hashtag never miss a Monday, hashtag BBG girls, hashtag
Love
BBG
it.
community. So yeah, February 2016. When did you start?
So I would have been just a year before.
Oh,
so
okay.
February 2015, 22nd of February. I still have the date etched in my head. And the reason I have it etched in my head was kind of because as I was telling you, my entire understanding of exercise was something you did purely for the summer. Like I'm not exaggerating by that. Like every single year I would start working out halfway through February, just after my birthday, work out from February to around like May, June, and then I wouldn't till the following year. And I remember the year where I started my Instagram, I obviously got to like June time and I was like, well, what do I do now? Because there are some people here. Like it had got to I would have been a few thousand followers. I thought I was the biggest, the biggest person on Instagram. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to continue working out because otherwise everyone's going to be like, what? This is not what we're here for. And so that is genuinely the only reason why that year I did not just go into my normal cycle of like, she works out for 1 quarter and does 3 quarters off.
But that was kind of part of it. You were encouraged to have an Instagram account for accountability and to connect with other people that were doing it. But I don't know how it was for you. For me, that got very obsessive because there were kind of these, I guess I'll say, kind of toxic attitudes and approaches around it. And for me, that led to this really obsessive behavior with working out, with my diet. It was like, if it fits your macros, was really big. You know, I'm weighing my food. I'm bringing my Tupperware of my boiled chicken to the restaurant. I'm doing all of the workouts. It was like 3 workouts a week, maybe, plus all of the challenges, plus I'm everything. And I didn't have an understanding at that time. I thought that was wellness. I thought that was health. And I thought that having abs meant that then you were healthy. So it was kind of similar to you, where like, I just didn't know. I was just kind of like doing the best I could with what I was given.
Yeah, right. And I do think kudos to the people who started it, because I do think that they like literally invented kind of fitness culture, especially online as it is today. I always go back and forth because obviously there are like toxic parts of these trends, and I do think like where it falls in your journey is really important in terms of like how you go back to see it. But I also think that people who were leading the toxicity were also probably experiencing it themselves. Like I feel like it's kind of part of the problem of idolizing people on social media is the fact that like they could be going through something really shit and am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay. And you are consuming that as well. They don't necessarily have a knowledge of the fact that they are too, and then you are as well, and then it's their fault, but also they didn't have that kind of wherewithal about it, which I'm not sure I explained that well at all. But I feel like, because I look back at that time and I definitely had such toxic views on exercise. I mean, we've talked about the fact that I literally believed that working out was for a quarter of the year and for one goal and one goal only, and that was aesthetic. And I was like purely going towards this like things like the thigh gap, like all of that. And I don't think that was like one person perpetuating that. I think that was like, it fits so well with like Fitspo culture at the time, is that it was all like, I'm trying to think of Instagram at that time, like I can see what the UI looked like. I can see the like blue at the top and the like hard lines in between all of the like grid stuff, the explore page, like all of that. It was so hardwired to perpetuate this.
Yeah, the transformation photos.
Oh my God, 100%.
That's how I built my account.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it was like, I don't know, there's obviously a place for that within people's fitness journeys, of course. I think that it was like this big perfect storm of like all of it coming together. And I think that in my what it would have been my second year, probably would have been when you followed me actually, I would have been working, I was an intern in like a corporate role, and I would like go to the gym before work like 5 a.m. Everything would be either in Tupperware, or I would have planned my day in terms of my meals on my Fitness Pal like at the beginning of the day, and then I'd go online and like see, like very much part of this as well, I would go online and I'd be like, see, the best way to do it if it fits your macros is not to add things in as you eat them. You need to add them in before you eat them so that you can see if it fits with your day. And me being like, I'm helping. I'm helping everyone here. Which obviously would have been like hugely toxic at the time. But I was also in that toxicity. I was like, this is the best way to do everything. And it was just like, it was so meticulously planned out. Like I would literally plan every single thing. I'd put my fucking coffee in my Fitness Pal.
Same.
Now I probably drink a liter of oat milk.
Yeah. Oh my God, I know. Yeah. And that was kind of what I meant by like, you're kind of doing the best you can with what you know. Like I thought that was health, and I thought that was wellness. And I truly at the time thought that macros were freeing, because I felt like, okay, I can eat all of this and then I don't think about it outside of that. I didn't really realize how like obsessive it was, and how, to your point, I would have to like recalculate everything if I ate something extra or whatever. But like I was promoting this toxic approach to health and wellness, but I didn't know, and I didn't think it was toxic at the time at all. And
I also do have to say, like, I think that that time I think actually did get me into fitness in a way that I now really appreciate. And I think that it wasn't necessarily the best way to do it in terms of all of that, and in terms of the way I saw it and the reasonings behind what I did and like all of that. But I do think in a funny way, the way it helped me get to a cycle of like, oh, actually you do just want to move your body for XYZ reasons that I hadn't even, in my mind at that point, sports was like, I'd loved gymnastics and I'd done that quite seriously. And then I stopped doing that because I was injured. And then I was like, okay, well, at least the big like chore part of my life has gone. I don't need to like do all of these like conditioning things, and I don't need to do all of this. So I just wouldn't go near exercise. And I do think it like having years of, my account built for years after that based on fitness. And that was as someone who a few years before, had literally no understanding of fitness, and could not for the life of me stick to anything to do with fitness, and did not see fitness as anything other than a vehicle for looking good on the beach. And I think that it kind of, in a roundabout way, definitely led to me having like a big appreciation for exercise, and very much using that as an outlet for all different things. But it's taken a long time to get there. There definitely would have been more linear approaches.
Yeah. I think it's amazing though. I think there's good and bad that came from it, I guess. Maybe not even necessarily bad, because it was like a learning process. And it's kind of amazing to look at some of those early BBG people who, launched careers off of it. And I was the same as you. Like, wellness was not part of my life. I was a hope to die drug addict and alcoholic prior to that. And I was 2 years sober when I started doing BBG, starting from scratch. And it totally gave me an appreciation for movement and nutrition and all of that. But it took a while to find that balance.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it was more of a, like, as in anywhere you went, whether you chose that, whether you chose something else, like you would have found that type of culture in pretty much every single area of Instagram at that time. Like, do you remember like the photos of like the smoothie bowls?
Yes.
And all of that. And like it was all like bikinis and smoothie bowls, and me in like rainy London being like, I will make this work. I will be part of this culture.
And like heavily filtered. Like I can see the filters too, with the filtered smoothie bowls, everything aesthetic. Like all of my pictures were like my hand with like the smoothie bowl.
I would creative direct like this entire thing. When I was making a smoothie bowl, I'm not sure I've ever liked a smoothie bowl for one. Like I really don't think that I've ever had a smoothie bowl and been like, this is what I wanted to have right now. And the like decoration of the bananas on it and the granola granola and the seeds. And also like that shit is so expensive. Like I used to save up to go and buy fucking chia seeds. And like I was on an intern on like 18 grand a year living in London.
Oh my God.
And I would like go into like the local health store and it'd be so expensive. Like I could get a whole meal and I didn't even fucking like chia seeds, and me being like, they'll only accept me if I have like this horizontal line of chia seeds across my smoothie
see
bowl.
It now through the middle. What about the cauliflower phase? That was, I don't know if you did
tough
that.
for me, not liking cauliflower. Really
the
tough.
Cauliflower smoothies.
I was equally as determined. Oh yeah, and I mean, to be fair, in what I've noticed in LA is I think the health food scene is absolutely amazing and I love it. And what I have been saying is like every time I want to order something, but I don't want to order something that's like, it's not that I want like a burger, it's the fact that I want not to cook.
Yeah.
And when you do that in the UK, you have like two options of healthy things because takeout is very much, you know, it's going to be something that's like more of a like big meal. But one thing I have noticed is like the amount you can order. Like I nearly ordered like a spaghetti like bolognese the other day, like a vegan one, and I just realized at the last moment that it was made of like zucchini, and I was like, no. I was like, this is obviously not what I'm in the market for. Please use some keywords here. Like I can't believe I was nearly about to arrive with like someone's spiralized courgette on my plate.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah. You can get anything that you want here modified in any way. And it's so funny that like people don't even, I don't know, bat an eye at it. Yeah. You should do quinoa spaghetti.
Really?
Yes.
Is that good? See, I actually really like things like edamame bean spaghetti and all of that. Like I think it actually tastes like I like the taste of it, so I will have that. But I've moved on from my chia seed phase. I've finally accepted the fact that like I don't actually like it and I don't need to like spend a whole mortgage on it.
Amazing. So you also started your YouTube around that time. You had a lot going on because you were also at Oxford.
Well, so I started Oxford in it would have been the September after you followed me.
Okay.
So I worked at IBM during that time, and I'd worked there for a year. I started the account actually when I was still at not school. We have it in the UK, we have like school up to your like 16 and then college if you stay on from like 16 to 18. So I was at like college or sixth form, and that's when I started the account. I worked for a year at IBM after I left that, and then I went to Oxford that summer. But I'd started my YouTube at some point in the year I was at IBM, and the reason I did it was actually only because you could not upload more than 15 seconds on Instagram. So I was like, well, how am I going to get the people my workouts? Like 15, and I used to do them in 15 seconds. It'd be like you'd literally see me do like one exercise, another exercise, another exercise.
At the time, I can't remember.
Oh, no, you couldn't do that until like second year of uni.
Okay. So it was just
my entire uni trajectory done in like Instagram updates. But so it would literally be like these 15 seconds. Anyway, so I started YouTube then, but it was honestly, I mean, there's a reason it did not take off for a good while, because I didn't watch YouTube as a person. So why I thought that I could wade into the space and be like, I'm going to create some good content is completely beyond me. But I would create this content where I did like, because I didn't watch YouTube, I just thought it was like a longer version of like what would be on my Instagram. So I'd literally be like, hi, I'm going to the gym. And then you'd see like my legs moving in like sped up motion, and then you'd see me like opening the door to the gym, arriving, doing a few exercise, and then like at the end it would be like, thank you for watching, done. That was my YouTube for about a year. Yeah, that was my version of a vlog. And I don't know why I never thought like maybe watch someone else's vlog. Like maybe have a little look at what content's doing well here on the platform. The strategic area of my brain was clearly not yet developed. Yeah,
but you blew up. I mean, I don't remember how many followers or anything that you had at the time, but you were huge.
So it started, to be fair, I think it really started blowing up when I was at Oxford. And I think there's a good few reasons for that. And it's funny because obviously my Instagram and my kind of content as a whole was around fitness, but I would actually say what I got the most traction for online and on YouTube was the kind of, I'm at uni, I'm in like for 3 years, it was me literally in like a room being like, I'm writing another essay and then putting a vlog out. And then it'd be like, I'm doing this again. Like, here's a day of like tutorials, like here's a day of this. And so actually a lot of what hit on YouTube wasn't actually about fitness when I like looked at it, but it was all like intertwined in this kind of very, I mean, it was authentic because there was literally no other way to do it. I did not have an ounce of spare time, so I didn't even have time to be fake if I wanted to. But it was like very much just, I was just sharing like the very much kind of like unfiltered experience at that point, which I think was a very key part of my journey, like very, very key. Whereas you'd go over to my Instagram and a lot of that was kind of the, you know, the workouts and all of that that I was doing. But realistically, the majority of the time I was like sat in a room with no cooking equipment eating like hard-boiled eggs out of the fridge. I
remember at the time being like, how is she doing all of this? Because, you know, if you are a content creator full-time, even though it was different back then, like it's very time consuming. And then to be a full-time student on top of that, and I've heard you talk about this in the past where you're like, I think it was interesting to people because like you didn't fit this mold, or like you didn't belong in the box that people wanted to put you in. Is that how you experienced it at the time, or do you just kind of recognize that in retrospect?
I think a little bit of both. I think that at the time, like it would be such a lie to be like, oh, I didn't know that they were interested in like the Oxford thing. Like, please, if you look at my thumbnails and like my titles at the time, it was like a day in the life at Oxford University, like student and working out, Oxford University. Like it was my biggest claim to fame.
Got it.
And like fucking hell did I like rinse that. But I do think, marketing, you know, like what can I say? You can't keep me from the marketing world. But you know, I was there and I was very much, I think there was like a number of different layers to this. It was very weird going to Oxford with this type of presence online. I think that's probably the first thing to say. I understand that like socials now are seen as something that's desirable to some extent, but actually in terms of like that time, it was seen as very, very weird. Like content creating and putting out something showing like me going to the gym and me doing anything that's like that isn't like valuing the kind of like academic side of things at all it could not be less cool. Like I think that it was, first of all, it was before the influencer time really, but also that was not a space where people were going to value influencer anyway. I still think that probably like half my peers who were there at the same time probably don't see what I've done as success at all, like not even in the slightest. And I think there was part of that where I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to be valued for this at all anyway here. Like no matter what I'm uploading online, it's always going to look fucking weird. Like it's always going to be like, what is this girl doing? Like why is she posting photos of herself in the gym? Why is she posting photos of her meals? Why is she telling everyone like what her day is looking like? Why is she like posting photos of her bum? Like as in like it just wasn't, you know. And so I was like, well, I might as well be getting the benefit from it elsewhere. And I think it's worth saying that it was definitely not appreciated there. Like not that I would want it to be like appreciated as in it was like looked down upon for sure, but it was like a key part of my journey. And I look back and I'm kind of like, wow, you had a lot of like the kind of bravery to be going about like actually doing that when you know that people would be looking at you being like, it's kind of pathetic. But it was just, you know, it was who I was and it was what I was doing at the time, and I enjoyed doing it, and I'm proud of myself for having like not batted an eyelid at that and just kind of pushed through, because obviously it built the foundations for my career now. And I really enjoyed it at the time as well. Like I really enjoyed that content. I worked like a fucking maniac though. Like I really, like when I look back at how I treated myself during that time, I honestly so I was doing 10,000 words a week, and as part of that you have a tutorial for each of those 2,500 or 2,000 to 2,500 words. So I'd have about 4 tutorials a week, and then I'd have all of my lectures, then I'd have the 10,000 words. And then I was obviously doing this YouTube thing, and I was committed to and by committed I say I committed myself, and therefore in my head there's like literally zero wiggle room, but I'd committed to 3 uploads a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 p.m. So one way or another I was getting a video out. And so whether it was like, it would either be, I would usually do like a vlog and then 2 non-vlogs a week. And so to do those 2 non-vlogs, I would wake up early when my my room didn't have any natural light, like it wasn't good natural light at all. And so I would wake up early on the days that my friend who was on the floor above had a lecture, a 9 a.m. lecture, and I had like a spare key for her room, and I would go upstairs and I would get into her room and I'd set everything up and I'd film like 3 to 4 videos back to back.
Oh my God.
And it was and I'd have planned them on a note. It would be like 10 things I wish I knew about my fitness journey, or like 10 of the things that shocked me most about Oxford, or like, you know, whatever it might be. Those are very unoriginal. I'm sure I did better at the time, but and I'd literally like whip through those before my friend came back and obviously like very much had to use the room, and then I'd go out like about my day. But like the productivity, all of this, it was it was a sharp operation. But it, like, I look back and I'm like, wow, you did not stop.
Yeah.
Like, just did not stop. And it fueled me. Like, I was really doing something I loved. So it fueled me. It's not that I was kind of being like discipline. Like, there was an element of discipline to it, but also there was a significant element to the fact that I was doing something I enjoyed, getting rewarded for it, and therefore just keeping on doing it.
Do you think that the fact that you felt like you weren't taken seriously at Oxford is what galvanized you to start your businesses? Because then you were doing something legitimate that wasn't just influencing?
I think I think I would be lying to say that there wasn't an element of that at all. Like, as in, I think that this is a two-way thing. I think that I used Oxford Online to justify the fact that I wasn't some like vapid girl who just took photos of my ass, like, which like
you can do both. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. But like, as in and of itself is like a little bit problematic and a little bit like I felt the need to like really prove that over and over. Like, I definitely used the fact that I went to Oxford as a like, oh, you've actually misunderstood me. Like, you've misunderstood me. And like, how could you possibly like not, you know, whatever it might be. Anyway, so I definitely used that side. And especially because like very early on in my kind of accounts, I always would post about things that weren't fitness, which I think at the time wasn't necessarily well received. Like, I remember doing this whole video and people were like, you know, how did you get those grades? And like, how did you get into Oxford? And I remember being like, well, you know, like, I went to a really good private school, and like, I really believe that in the UK, like, the state versus private system is like absolutely terrible, and like, these are the things that they did versus like some of my friends in terms of like why, you know, I think that I ended up getting that good grades. Or like, when there was like the Irish abortion referendum, and like it took over my socials for like weeks, and I was like, you know, going like ham on that, and people would constantly be like, stick to fitness, and I was like, I know more about this than I do fitness. Like, fitness, I'm like, this is not my thing. Like this. And I definitely used like, okay, take me seriously, look, I go to Oxford, as like a token of like free pass, like, stop looking down upon me. And definitely an element of that was insecurity. I think the other way around, you're completely right. In my final year at uni, it was in like the January, and I was starting Tala in May, and it had been underway since August of the previous year. And well, actually, I thought I was starting it in March. It ended up launching in May. And I just remember one like evening, I just started frantically applying for like all of the grad schemes that I could find. I was like, I've been to Oxford. This is what I need to do. Like, this is what I should be doing. If I leave here and I go into full-time content creation, I had like just like this insecurity in my head that I was like, I won't be here. I'm impressive, then I won't be impressive. And I think that was just like this underlying like need for validation that I was getting externally at the time, and which I was a very, very insecure teenager. And I think that I spoke about this in my book. Like, the whole of the last chapter was about the fact that I thought I'd grown confidence. Like, I thought I'd built this confidence. I'd actually built this, like, I'd built followers. Like, that's what I'd built. It wasn't confidence. It was validation that I was getting from elsewhere. I wasn't getting it internally. And so I think there was an element of this as well, in the way that I was like, okay, must do something. What's the next impressive thing I can do? So I applied for all these grad schemes, despite the fact that I was literally starting a new company that I knew was going to be something that I really wanted to do. And I'd also applied to business school. And I was just like, oh, you know, I'm like going to do these things. And like, this is going to be like my next like co-signing of approval for like the wider world that like, don't look down on me, like don't look down on me. And I think that's like very loaded, and it's something that I've like tried to unpack a lot. I think it's like very inherently entwined in my personality. Like there's been nothing that I am definitely driven by that still now. Like I try and unpack it and I'm like, what is driving this? Is it the fear that I won't be taken seriously? Is it the fear that I won't be impressive and therefore people won't like me or won't respect me, or like whatever it might be? I've really tried to break that down more and more and more, but I definitely don't think I've fully broken that down. I had obviously started my previous business like 2 years before in my first year at uni. So, but at the time, I don't think I'd done that as a kudos thing. I definitely did that as a necessities thing. But the more and more that grew and the more and more it like did well, and I realized I really did have a knack for like not just marketing, but kind of understanding product market fit when it came to like my really specific market. Like I could predict to a T which colorway, which shape, which waistband of like the Gymshark leggings that I'd be plugging like would do best. Like I could see all of it because I could see the analytics. Yeah. And I would literally be able to predict by like and I would do my videos in a way that would enhance the strongest of them, because I'd be like, you know, strengthen your strengths. Like, you know, if this is a better product, like the chances are that like more and more people are gonna click through based on this specific thing. And I just realized that I like had that real knack, and I think that gave me like more and more validation. And I think as people started seeing me as more of a business owner, I definitely wanted to play into that. But the fact that I was applying for grad roles and applying for business school in my final year, when I could more than happily support myself, I absolutely think would have been driven by the fear of not being taken seriously.
I can relate to that a lot, because in 2020, it was like during COVID, everybody was kind of reevaluating things. And I was like, I'm going to go to med school, which is like something I was always interested in. Mind you, I dropped out of college, so I had to like go back, finish undergrad, then do the whole thing. But I was like so determined. And I had my podcast at the time, and I had been talking to a lot of doctors, and it was COVID, and health was like at the forefront of everybody's minds. And I was like, I want to be in there. And I started the whole process, and I was in school for a year. And then I kind of came to that realization too, where I was like, I don't think I'm doing this for the right reasons. I was like, I think I'm doing it because I'm like having these experts on the show who are so smart, and the influencer content creator job, even though it's a totally legitimate job
and
now,
hard and not, you know, like I really think that a lot more people would do it if it was as easy as we perceive it to be.
But it's still so stigmatized. And 100%. I realized like, oh wait, I think that I'm doing this also to feel legitimate myself and be legitimate in other people's eyes. So I can relate to that a lot, because I think that there are some parallels there. But to your point, what you just said, I think it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen on TikTok, but there are people who are like talking about how they quit content creation to work at a 9-to-5 because it's so much better for them to work in a job where you go into an office or whatever, you have set hours, you have boundaries, and your job is your job and your life is your life. And there's, you know, a clear delineation between those two things.
No, I actually haven't seen that, but I love that.
Yeah.
And I am a big believer in the fact that entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. I believe that you will tell someone who should be an entrepreneur, you will tell them all of the worst things about entrepreneurship, and they'll be like, cool, I'm going to do it anyway.
Because they think that it's like the traveling and the this and the that. And you're clicking through the computer and at the photo shoot. And
by
all
a pool
the cool
and
things.
like all of this. I also think that like, I don't think that entrepreneurship's for everyone. And I don't think being self-employed's for everyone. And I think it should be for everyone that wants it. So it's not to gatekeep. It's not to be like, oh, you shouldn't, this is so hard. Only I could do this. I don't believe that at all. Like there'll be people, like there are so many people who would be far better than me at like being an entrepreneur. But or being self-employed, whatever it might be. But like, I do think we've like hugely over glamorized what it actually looks like. And I think that also it's not about how hard it is, because I don't think it's so much about over glamorizing like, okay, this is really hard. Like when I say content creation is hard, I don't mean that you wake up in the morning and you have to get over lots of hard things, because I don't believe it's the hardest thing in terms of that. I think you need a real talent and a real knack to be able to do it. And the amount brands, or even like Tala, for example, pays to do a campaign shoot that one influencer could direct, shoot, edit, like creative direct, style all on their own, like goes to show like how valuable this type of thing is. But I do think that like there's been this like missold representation of like self-employment as greater freedom, and entrepreneurship always is greater freedom. And I think that it can lead to greater freedom. And I think that if you set up like a certain type of business, and if you aren't solely revenue driven, and if you like, you can be really smart about it, and you can be, you can unlock greater freedom. But that a lot of the time is after like a good few years of like the opposite direction, like working far more than a traditional 9 to 5. And I think even then, like this idea that you like don't have a boss it's misled, because this boss then is associated with someone telling you what to do. But like life tells you what to do based on the fact that you need to earn money, based on the fact that you need to have security, based on the fact that you have investors, or you have customers, or you have clients, like whatever it might be. All of something will become your boss. It's not just going to be you waking up in the morning like deciding, like, so in all different walks, something will become your boss. It's about working out like which boss you would most like. Like, would you like your day to be entirely determined by customers? You could. Would you like your day to be entirely determined by clients? Would you like your day to be entirely determined by investors? Unless you are like stinking rich and can do all of those things yourself and do not need to be revenue driven, you are going to have a boss. It's about working out what type of boss is worth it for you, and what type of boss versus security, like remuneration, kind of time off, all of these different things, like what the ratio is of those different things, especially through things like TikTok. Like everyone's aspiring to be freelance. And I just don't know, in a world where the majority of us are going to have careers for like 40, 50 years, you go like there's, you can always go back, of course you can, but it is harder. And like I really do believe that like more and more of us, and I believe that I wish I could have told myself this, more and more of us should get as much training as possible through more traditional routes, until we believe that we are an expert in our craft. And an expert is not just making more than your 9 to 5. An expert is knowing how to pivot in every single different kind of change within the industry, or within social media, or within the algorithms or platforms, or like whatever it might be. And if you're not an expert, you are not going to be able to like weather all of those different storms, whereas you get to weather those different storms when you're an employee. Does that make sense?
Completely.
I feel like I just feel like there's this kind of misrepresentation. I don't want to discourage anyone from following their dreams. I just think like making sure that your dream has not quite been missold. And even if you can make more 1 month, 2 months, 12 months, 24 months than you do in your 9 to 5, like what's the trajectory? What does that look like over time? How does that grow? How do you build that client base? How do you make sure you're always like people say with agencies, you're always one client away from like bankruptcy and one client away from your big break. Like that's literally the saying with agencies, and yet we're sold this as like, this is a great idea, I think there's a bit of a rush, and the bit of a rush is because it's perceived to be freelance and self-employed, and entrepreneurship is perceived to be the correct end goal for everyone, which I just don't think it is.
It's a completely different kind of pressure, I think, because I've had regular jobs where you go in, you clock in, you know what your role is for the day. Somebody is telling you what to do. You know that you're getting paid. Like there's consistency, right? And it takes a lot of the pressure off, I think. And that's not to say there aren't so many high pressure jobs, you know, where somebody has a boss or whatever, but it's a different kind of pressure where you wake up and you're like, oh, I have to come up with content and I have to feed the beast of, you know, the algorithm, the audience. And to your point, you constantly have to be pivoting and kind of adapt to new trends and new landscapes and everything. And there's job insecurity because it's like, you know, the platform could go away tomorrow. And, you know, there's always people who are going to come up and be bigger tomorrow. And it's just like, I don't know. I find I get very burnt out, especially across multiple platforms. And I know that you kind of stepped away from social media, right? And doing like typical quote unquote content creation. And you wanted to ensure that your companies are scalable and that they have a future that isn't tied to you. So is this what led to that decision? And what was that like for you? Because you're living my dream.
Thank you. Yeah. It's all intertwined for sure. And like me definitely going on like a bit of a rant of like, not everyone wants to be full-time and like not everyone should want to be like a content creator and like all of these different stuff. Like it all ties back to the fact that like I'm sitting here from a position of like a huge privilege, someone who could make a living full-time as a content creator and decides to put focus elsewhere, and someone who had that opportunity, and someone who, you know, like as in, of course it's easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, that's not what you want to do. I also categorically, I liked it at that point that we were talking about like at uni, but I realized that the job itself was not suited to my skill set at all. I think I have a real aptitude for marketing. I think I have a real aptitude for understanding product as marketing and product towards a target customer and product market fit in general. And I think those things led to me being a good content creator because I was able to ascertain, you know, what types of things to be posting about, and, you know, whether that was specifically just like educational or contextual or whatever, or whether it was actually about products and hauls and like all of these different types of things. But like the biggest parts of the content creation job are doing all of these different things and being happy with your own work and being solid enough in it that you can put it out to the wolves and to have it be received badly and you still feel like you're doing well. And like, first of all, I've talked about the fact that definitely at that time I was like really quite insecure and I was very reliant on external validation. But on top of that, even as I've done that growth away from that point, like I'm a huge people pleaser, and I feel like being a people pleaser and being a social media content creator are not two things that go that well together. Like it just doesn't, like you cannot try and people please like hundreds of thousands of people every day. Like you just can't. It doesn't make any sense. Like I always talk about context collapse, and context collapse is the fact that like if you were telling a story to your mum, to your boyfriend, to your friend, to a stranger you just met, like you would tell that story differently. You would tell it completely differently. And therefore, when you're talking to like an audience full of people, you're not able to context collapse. Like that context collapse doesn't exist. You put it out in one form and you think it's going to be received well, or you don't know if it's going to be received well, or whatever it might be. And like, of course it's not, from all directions. And like, no, that's not the end of the world. And no, that shouldn't, like, everyone should try and be strong enough to mean that that doesn't rip it down. But I actually realized that like the measures of success in the area I was in this kind of content creation area, these measures of success were specifically measures of success that I don't value, or that it wasn't healthy for me to value. So the measure of success of a video getting more views led to me doing worse content to get more views because I knew it was specifically going to get more views. Like nothing seedy, but like as in I just, you know, I have a quite like a logical, strategic brain, and I was like, okay, this works, do more of this. I wasn't very good at cementing myself in this kind of, okay, what value do I want to add to the world, and being able to ignore everything else. And I also just realized that I was like missing a huge amount of what I do enjoy. It wasn't so much that I didn't enjoy this. I really enjoyed so much of it. And like one of the things I missed most is just like vlogging. Like I fucking loved vlogging. Like I, you know, like that was my lifeblood. But I feel like what I was missing was working with people and problem solving with people and batting ideas back and forth. And I just realized that like my favorite parts of my job at that time were when we would like very occasionally all get in a room and have a conversation about like a new product, or you know, when I was starting Tala, then it was like a lot more. I'd spend a lot of time with, you know, the two people that worked there, and we'd like bat all of these ideas back and forth, and we'd try all of these things, and we'd put on a random shoot and it would look fucking terrible, and then we'd like, well, no, we're not going to do that again, or like whatever it would be. But like the process I loved so much. And I just realized that I was not suited to this long term. I realized that it had been perfect as a season of my life. Like it had been perfect as this kind of this phase. And of course I haven't stepped away from it fully, but there was 2 years where I literally put out like not a single thing of value at all. You'd get like a shit selfie from me every like 2 months. Like genuinely I would post every 2 months or something. And I also just realized that I was doing too much, not as good as it could be done.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make this decision to, as you say, invest in these brands that I believed very, very strongly in. And there was a lot of things at the time that were like, I restructured the whole of Tala kind of just as we were coming into COVID times, because I was like, this is structured as like an influencer merch brand. This is like amazing product. I really believe in this. We've got like incredible metrics, and this is structured as an influencer merch brand. Like if I stop posting tomorrow, brand dies. Like, and then for what?
Yeah.
Like then this is just a merch brand. Like you say you're a business owner, and like, sure, yeah, it's still a business owner. You're like selling, but like that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to build this company that I really believed in and thought that people would love to receive. And so I basically just decided, I was like, you've got to take that away from yourself completely. It's too easy of a thing to fall back on. It's too easy to just be like, okay, this is a bit too hard. I'm just going to film this and get this out, and people are going to like it anyway. And so I literally I deleted every single one of my old YouTube videos, like overnight. I deleted them, and I was like, I'm taking away, because now it's going to be a big thing if you post a vlog. So now you've got to do a big fucking thing about it, and then you've got to stick to it. Do you want to do that? No. And I like made it like impossible for myself. I was like, you know, you want to do this, but the instant gratification is winning every time. You don't want to do that full time. That's not the life you want to build for yourself when you're 40. Like that's not what you want to do. And so I just like spent a good few years going in and just being like, if you really like, I strongly believe that like 6 months dedicated in something, relentlessly working on making it better, can put you 2, 3, 5 years ahead. Like I strongly believe that. And I just decided to execute it that way. And, you know, we're nowhere near where I want to be. Like, I hope that, like, in a few years, we'll look back at where Tala is now and go like, oh, you know, she was so small. But, like, I've built something that I'm so proud of. And not just something that I'm so proud of from a perspective of kind of, I think it's impressive, which is obviously what I have a tendency to do, but something that I'm so proud of because I get to go there every day. And I've like built this workplace around myself to go in and literally like I feel like I'm playing a game. Like I feel like, and don't get me wrong, half the time that game is like shit. Like I hate that fucking game. But like I'm going in and I'm like looking over these designs and I'm looking over the marketing plan and I'm at a shoot and I'm in a board meeting and I'm like, I made up this whole workplace. I feel like I'm playing house. I feel like I'm playing like doctors, you know, when you're like a kid. And I was like, this is the type of workplace that works for me because I get to go into 5 different meetings and all of them are completely different and using different parts of my brain. And I feel like I can add value. I feel like I can hopefully nurture other people to get to where they want in their careers. I feel like we are building something incredible. But I think beyond even the like, I want to build this incredible brand that people buy product from and they're like, wow, this is fucking incredible. Beyond that, I want to build, you know, I feel so proud of myself for building a life for myself and like a daily schedule for myself that I'm like, I feel fulfilled. Like I feel fulfilled in my everyday and it's suited to me. And that doesn't mean that it's not like fucking hard all the time and literally just like when I least expect it, it's just like, oh, let's just throw this shit at you. But like I'm very proud of it.
And I think when you're doing something, even when you do have challenges like that, when you are fulfilled and it's something that you do enjoy, you can weather that and it doesn't burn you out. Like, I mean, I can just speak for myself doing sponsored content for social media, which I don't do that much of anymore. But when I do, I'm always like, why am I doing this? Like it takes away from the things that I do love doing and the content that I do love making and the things that I want to do in the future and where I want things to go. And it just burns you out. Whereas if it's navigating a challenge that comes up with something that I love, or like, I don't know, if I'm interviewing somebody about a topic that I know nothing about and I have to learn all that stuff I love. That's like a good challenge, like a good stressor. Whereas the other stuff is just like, it just drains you.
Yeah. So the way I think about it is I did a lot of reading into like the original theory behind flow state and, you know, why we find it so enjoyable when we're like working on something and we get into a flow state where we're kind of like really fixated on what we're doing and we're kind of like working through it, and you come out of that and you feel really good. Like whether it's cooking, whether it's working, whether it's like learning something difficult, like it releases something. I mean, it's literally hormonal, but it like releases something in us when we're like, I did that. Like, you know, you get that dopamine release. You get that kind of like, oh, I've overcome this. And like the point where that happens is the intersection between having high challenge and high skill. So it's not about something just being difficult. It's about something being difficult, but difficult in something you are highly skilled at. And so and that doesn't need to be like you being an expert. As I said, it could be cooking. Like you are skilled enough to overcome the challenge of putting all of those things together and making something that tastes nice. And I just realized that none of the things that I had in my day were getting me into a flow state. Like occasionally planning a video but all of the rest of it would be product stuff. Like all of the rest of it would come back to the businesses. And I was like, I'm not putting myself in a position where I can feel fulfilled. And I do think that like, you know, don't get me wrong, as I've said, like that is a hugely privileged position to be in terms of like the way that you build that up as a career. But at the same time, like I believe as humans, like we seem to be, especially with like TikTok and everything, like we seem to be trying to program our lives to have the least challenge possible. Like we go for convenience over everything. Like we don't want a boss because we don't want anyone to tell us what to do. We don't want to commute because we, you know, part of it, obviously we don't want to pay for it, but like we don't want to, you know, we don't want to have those annoying little things like where you get on the train and you're like, oh fuck, that's like not this, or like it takes you a bit longer or whatever it might be. We're like working towards the maximum convenience possible. And don't get me wrong, like I think that's a good thing to a certain extent. And I think it's definitely a good thing when it comes to breaking down barriers for things like, you know, like working mums and like all of these different things where flexibility is incredibly important and necessary for us to build workplaces that work for a lot of people. But I don't believe that we as humans are meant to not be faced with challenge every day that we can overcome. Like I think that is where we get joy out of. And so like I remember I was talking to my friend the other day and she is a content creator and she was like, I just feel like I'm kind of like floating at the moment. And I was like, you know, like talk me through what you're doing at the moment. She was like, oh, well, you know, like I get up and I'll like go to the gym at like a time where it's a bit quieter and like I'll do some responding to emails and I'll do some shooting content and like all of this. And like it's all, there's no money issues here. Like she's like making a fantastic living. And so like this sounds like something where it's like, you know, like the tiniest violin in the world. Like it's not about that. It's more like how you feel as a human being. And she was like, I'm just doing this like every day, all of this. And I was like, do you feel like you're being challenged at any part of your day? Because I was like, I'm just like gonna take like a stab at this. But I would say like you're very financially comfortable. You're going, even things like you're going to the gym at a time where you don't need to confront anyone else. You don't need to wait for a machine. You don't need to have any challenge. You don't have a commute. So you don't get time to be bored. You don't get time to just like sit there and be like, oh, this is fucking annoying. Like another challenge that you overcome. So the only thing that is annoying in your life is like work. Like that is a recipe for just like hating what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's a recipe for hating what you're doing, because the only challenge is associated with like earning a living.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I believe that like convenience is meaning that we're all like trying to move away from anything that isn't just instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And actually that leads to speed, and it leads to sometimes saved money, it leads to saved time, and like, as I said, important for lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if we do that on a mass scale across all of our lives, like, that's why so many like really rich people are fucking bored. Like, no one wants to do nothing. Like, we as humans are programmed to have challenge, and I worry that we see challenge as bad when we need to be building challenge that we can overcome, like little things, or like the work itself that we get into that flow state on every single day. Like, that's how we literally get dopamine releases.
Yeah. When you've designed your life to only feel comfort, or if you feel only comfort and convenience the majority of the time, what you're going to notice is when you feel uncomfortable. And that's going to be magnified, I feel like, because you don't have that. I don't know. You need the variety. It's like so cliche, but like, you need the bitter to feel the sweet, right?
Yes.
And vice versa. And if all you're feeling is just comfort and convenience, then as soon as you feel something other than that, it's like, whoa, it's jarring.
It becomes more uncomfortable. And I think that like, this is what I always like. I got a message the other day from someone being like, I've got this super flexible work from home job at the moment, but I find it a bit boring. Do I take the job that's like in my dream industry, but it's not work from home? And I was like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
I was like, obviously I didn't respond like that because I'm not an idiot, but like, I'm not mean. But I was just like, convenience doesn't equate to like beneficial all the time. Like, comfort isn't the only thing we should be aiming for. Like, we're here for so long, hopefully. Like, we should be building in discomfort. Like, we should be building in a life where you feel like adequately challenged. Like I always say, and like there's a lot of kind of literature around the fact that like the best workplaces, you feel equally supported as you do challenged. So you're constantly feeling challenged, but you feel supported enough. And that to me is like the type of life we should be building. None of us should be building a life where, or you can build whatever life you want. I'm not going to tell anyone what type of life they should build. But I think I built a life for myself where I was only supported. I wasn't challenged. I wasn't challenged at all. The only time I was challenged was when people were being like, you look terrible. And so I was like, okay, cool. And so like that as well, in itself, like you need to be challenged with things that are like good challenges. And that can be a hard job. That can be something that you feel like is a bit out of your comfort zone. That can be something that you feel like is a bit too much of a step up. But like if you weren't ready, you wouldn't have the opportunity. And I really believe that I especially like definitely got it into my head that I should be like aiming for the easiest path to the maximum success possible. And I think that is, yes, a recipe for success to a certain extent, but I don't think that's a recipe for happiness. And I think that's why I made my job like 10 times harder, literally for fun. Like some days I'm literally like, you could be on a hotel brand deal on a beach right now. Like you could be literally sitting on a fucking beach and you're here like arguing with fucking FedEx over like a bra, or like arguing with customs telling them to release your stock because you've got a shoot to do and like it's releasing next week, and like if you don't do it you won't hit target and all of that. And I'm like, and why have I done this? But like I know why I've done it. Like creating a life where you are equally challenged as you are supported, like every single day, like that is the recipe for going home. And like sometimes you're going to feel drained, sometimes you're going to feel like you didn't challenge yourself enough, but like the times where you go home and you have like that breath of relief, but also like, oh, like I got through to like that was, you know, I did the thing today. Like I really believe that we're programmed to need that.
So inspiring. I think so many people are going to get so much out of that. You have so much going on between your brands. You have your podcast. Tell everybody where they can find everything.
Wow, thank you. So I am Grace Beverley across all social media. It's Beverley Ley, which I have to say when we're like close to Beverly Hills.
We'll link everything too.
And I have 3 businesses, Tala, Shreddy, and the Productivity Method. Tala is at We Are Tala. Shreddy is just Shreddy. And the Productivity Method is just the Productivity Method. And yeah, we are across all platforms on those. And I have a podcast called Working Hard, Hardly Working as well.
You're definitely working hard. I don't know about the hardly working part.
Oh, I love hardly working. I hardly work enthusiastically. Like Amazing. I really do.
Work smarter, not harder, right? That's the
little bit
motto.
of both.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.